Well, you can look at it in a host of ways. It's a wilderness camping trip. It's a international city. It's the largest interactive art exhibition. More importantly, it's a community that extends well beyond the borders of Black Rock City, to which many thousands of people belong. It's a ritual with great spiritual resonance for many. It's an intriguing a model of what might and could be in the world, because it's a social experiment. It's all of these things.
Of Burning Man on northern Nevada and the Reno area.
Well, I think it's been good. Especially lately, these days of economic stress, and I know Nevada has been affected, really adversely by the recession, the downturn, the depression. I don't know what we're calling it anymore. It looks like it's gone on for a while. It looks like it's going to go on for a while longer, I think we've drawn a lot of visitors to the region, and I think it's had a really positive economic impact on things. But it's more than that. The second largest group by state that come to our event is Nevadans. A fact not frequently cited.
Second?
Yeah.
California?
After California. And it's affected, well, as recently as the last few months, we build a huge temple here every year. And this year's a hugely ambitious project. And it's required an army of volunteers and workers. And this year, the staging area where all of it was prefabricated was located in Reno, and that created that drew in a lot of people from Reno to help. And I was talking to the architect of this structure the other day, and he informed me that in the process, they were in a poor neighborhood, and in the process, homeless people showed up who were hungry, and they said, "Well, if you can work, we'll feed you." And they did, and that is, they did work, and they were fed, and then some of them were really exceeded at what they were doing, because there were people who were they weren't homeless because they didn't want to work. They were homeless because they couldn't get a job. And one in particular it became essential to what they were doing, and now the architect, who happens to be from Reno, has told me that they're determined to find him a job. So that's a little story, but it affected a life, and I think we've affected a lot of lives of people who live out here. Listen, we couldn't have done this in California probably. They would have regulated us to death. I mean, I say that as a Californian. I don't want to be harsh on California. But out here, there's a sentiment that's very favorable to the robust exercise of liberty. And so, this is why it's our home.
Here in northern Nevada.
Well, this Playa, which is, it's funny, in the press they talk about playas. They call it mysteriously the Playa. Well, playas are not mysterious to Nevadans. It's the generic term for a dry lake bed, and this is probably the largest playa in Nevada. It's esteemed to be one of the largest such places in the world, and the character of this landscape has been very influential. nature is in the house here. We contend with vast natural forces, the cyclones of dust, windstorms that obliterate your vision. Everything, it whites out. And anyone who's been in the desert knows the phenomenon. And when the dust goes away, you're dealing with this cosmic expanse of space. And what we discovered when we first came here is that in all this nothingness, anything that was seemed more intensely so. It's as if anything that was a little larger than you, which is kind of the experience we had on the beach in San Francisco. We made the man a little bit taller than us against the broad Pacific, and he just seemed to loom up as this thing that connected earth and heaven. It seemed impressive to us then. And that was a creative stimulant, because if by doing anything you could have a unique impact on your environment, then that was an incitement to creativity. And it was a blank canvas. So in many ways, character of Burning Man bears the indelible stamp of this sublimely beautiful country. Well, we have a new mission that's been a burning for some time. We've created a nonprofit called the Burning Man Project, whose mission is to take the 10 principles that we've evolved here at this site and spread them about in the world and in any community, and seek out those opportunities in those places where all of those principles can combine to form the matrix of a culture that conditions how people live their everyday lives. And what we purpose to do now is to take this event, which is thriving, and give it away, because gifting is one of those principles. It's kind of rather an abnormal move. We're going to just, the 6 owners, I'm one, are going to give it away. And thereafter, any proceeds it makes will go toward that mission, to influence the greater world.
As part of that mission, is Northern Nevada in the future?
Well, that's one of the programs. We've already started in the small, but we're going to expand. We have great ambitions for that. It's called Big Art for Small Towns. There are many communities here that are it's not just the big cities, people concentrate on that, but small towns that are in need of attracting visitors, and also art is a wonderful way of embodying identity. And so we want to take some of these artworks, many of which are just monumental, but designed to be portable, and install them in smaller communities. At the same time, of course, Black Rock Solar, which evolved here, and we were involved very much in the organization of. In fact, their offices are still in our office. Has been doing solar installations in small towns throughout Nevada, and recently coming into the event, you probably saw an installation on the Paiute Reservation, and we've gone to several towns and powered hospitals, schools. And I say we because it's all one culture, it's its own nonprofit, but it's part of our culture. And that came out of an art theme, of all things. So we did an environmental art theme, and suddenly people began thinking about solar, and then that spread outside of this event. And that's and that's had actually a significant effect on a number of places. That's continuing apace. So those are examples.
Brought into a lot of people's lives.
Well, initially, it's hard to. Initially, of course, in some quarters we regard with alarm. You have people ramping around and painting themselves with polka dots and doing strange things, and we call that radical self-expression. And but it's caught on. I remember in an early year that people locally, they were looking askance at us. Who are these people? We were strangers. And we were putting the man up that year, and this is very early on. We were still raising him on the ground, and there were two fellows who'd driven out and were leaning against a pickup truck. They had a gun rack in the cab, and they had their arms crossed, and they were regarding us rather narrowly, and trying to imagine what in the world we were up to, and one of them said, "What y'all doing here?" And I said, "Well, you see, it's a giant man." He said, "Had the arms and the legs, and he's lying down here. But what we want to do is make him stand up, and to do that, we use a boom. You can see it on the ground. You're standing right next to it, and we're going to put the cable over that, and then that's going to rotate up, and that gives us mechanical advantage, and then we're going to raise the man in fact, we need some help. We've got guy wires so we can steady it." And I was describing it as a piece of work. Well, they understood that, and said, "Well, "Okay, take that," and they just helped to raise it. And I saw one of them later on that evening. And he had his shirt off. His body was painted, and he was having a rare old time. He fit right in. It didn't take long, because here. It's not what you pretend to be. It's not what you're defined by what you do. And there are all kinds of people, all classes of people. They're rich and poor. It's an incredibly diverse community, and we practice what is called, one of the principles is radical inclusion. Everybody is welcome, and you won't be judged by some cheap signboard, of what we think you belong to some class we don't like. And we've never thought that way. And so it's that is why the second largest group of people who come here are from Nevada. And because Nevadans, it turns out, kind of caught into the idea of radical self-expression. And, a lot of people who were very independent, but then who discovered the joys. And maybe this is one thing we brought. Independence is one thing, and feeling like you're an original is good. Feeling like you're unique is good, and that you ought to be able to do what you want to do, that's good. We're for that. And but the trick is to do it with other people, to join in concert with them, and feel that in doing that and expressing what you are, that your identity is shared with them and theirs with you. And that's something, especially in a land like this where this can be this can be a lonely land, There are signs that, it's a message I wrote originally, and when you drive in and by the roadside, like Burma Shave signs, and it says, "Welcome to the vacant heart of the Wild West." We're just trying to fill that heart with something. And that vacancy, well, that represents all the freedom in the world.
What is
Well, we've of course become. We've been here 20 years, and it takes a while. It can take about 20 years to. The smaller a community, the harder it is to break into. In a big city, you can join in the tussle, and in a smaller community, it's harder, and. You know how it is in small towns. Someone can live there for 10 years. They're the new person, the new guy. And but things happened early on. We're a community, and it's all based on mutual assistance and certainly an intense kind of neighborliness. And there were some ranchers out by a family entire family that lived there all their lives, and their cow fell in a sinkhole, and we helped to pull it out. Well, they said, well, maybe you're okay. Well, we got to be friends, and we improved the road because we shared a road with them finally when we bought a little land for a staging area, and we paved it, and then we named it after them. That's how you make friends. And Gerlach, the little town here, well, it's under particular stress right now. They're challenged. Their school is challenged. The neighbor town, Empire, was the Empire, which was a company town owned by USGS, the gypsum folks, and they just the market went down for their product, and they just closed the town down, and there were more people in Empire than there were in Little Gerlach. And so now they're having trouble maintaining the school. We've been giving charitably to communities around us for years, and so we have also the yearly influx of people. We were always responsive to the inconvenience and the problems that might create for people, and we were always responded to whatever was brought to us. And people learned to trust our word, and now I think Gerlach looks at us as a way that it can sustain itself, because otherwise it might become a ghost town too. There are a lot of ghost towns in Nevada, and especially in a place where oftentimes there's one industry that supports a community. If that industry falters, then that can spell the death of their life together. And we're hoping to it'd be premature, but I think we have some plans that might bring life back to Gerlach, and we've worked hard to help to rezone it so that maybe it can assume a new identity, and it would be nice if the next generation stayed and their children could stay and live here. And that doesn't look like it's happening now, but there may be great opportunities at hand, and we want to be part of that.
This relationship with the Reno area and the future evolution of that relationship.
Well, we've been installing the Black Rock Arts Foundation, another spin-off organization, which I'm still the president of, actually. Has begun installing art in downtown Reno, and Reno, like a lot of cities in this country, and Vegas too, is facing this. The same thing is happening down there. It's trying to reinvent itself in this faltering economy, and so the city fathers are inviting the artists to come in and help revive things, we just installed, I'm going to forget the title of this piece, it escapes me, but Spire of Fire, thank you. That's probably the most daring piece of public art that's been installed yet in a city. Nevada's leading the way because Nevada's a little more daring that way, and sited in downtown Reno, it's proved very, very popular. It's drawing people down to the city center, and that's just the beginning of it. So we're not only thinking about big art for small towns, we're talking about even bigger art for big cities, and that has been going on for a while. We have a relationship with the art museum. We have a relationship with and of course, in the process, it's helping to bring in tourists, and of course, Reno counts on that. And as far as I can see, it's all good.
Northern Nevada.
Well, first of all, we don't have any plans to travel to another region.
Right, but just as a hypothetical.
We like our home here. We feel like this is our home. We're about to negotiate another long-term permit with the Bureau of Land Management, and we're very confident about our long-term tenure in relation to the federal government. among other things, if we couldn't happen, I think that the Bureau of Land Management would hear from the residents of Nevada, and this is the BLM's home. It's their great headquarters. You know, it's the center of the BLM empire within the federal system. And we get along well with the BLM, but it's nice to have friends. And if we left, well, I don't know. I guess things would go back to the way they were, it wouldn't be the downfall of Nevada or anything. I think at this point we'd be missed. I think at this point we'd be missed. If we move someone else, all these Nevadans who are currently coming to the event, the lion's share of them would just leave the state and go to wherever we were. And it would have an economic impact, a significant one.
Anything lasting, cultural report?
Well, would it trigger some catastrophic collapse? No, I'm not going to. I don't imagine that.
Lasting impact for Burning Man.
Oh, the lasting impact here? Well, the way things are going, I think it is conditioning the culture. When you get all these people collaborating on a project like that temple, that just brings people together, and that generates community. That leads you to meet people you wouldn't meet normally, that you wouldn't think were you belonged in your circle of acquaintance. And there's nothing like working on a project with other people that transcends your ego, and that in our case then is given to an entire city of people out here in the desert, and it just expands your sense of who you are and what you belong to, and that would be the greatest loss. That'd be the greatest loss, but I don't think that's going to happen. You know, we're some of our folks have moved to Nevada. You know, they liked it so well. We're to stay here.
Ship with Northern Nevada and Reno?
Yeah, I think so. As I said, you know, we've learned to work with municipalities, and we've learned to work with government. In fact, it's easy for us to do it because we run a city ourselves, and we understand what public safety means, and we understand. You know, we've been shouldering the responsibility for this temporary city all these years, and it can be a very sobering experience. And if you weren't responsible to begin with, you'd better get responsible fast. And I think the Burning Man project purposes to use the experience we've had here in tandem with the experience we've had in San Francisco. We're working very closely with the mayor's office there and the whole entire city government. You know, in both places, that can be a model for cities anywhere and everywhere, and that will expand. That'll become a new standard for urban life in many ways, and helpful in a variety of ways. And San Francisco is now talking about creating art pads, so you can bring in these portable, monumental, inspiring pieces of art, just drop them down and leave them in a neighborhood for 3 months. And it's a new model for public art. If you you say it's forever, the neighborhood will fight forever about it. There's always someone who will oppose it, and it'll take forever. You may never do it. But if it's just temporary, then you do it. If people come to love it, then they don't want you to take it away, because it's theirs and they own it. And especially if it's interactive, and their children play on it, they will want to keep that. And that's a model that Reno might consider. You can actually systematize it. We're very organized here. You could actually create a pad that, and by prearrangement with this event, but we have regional context all over the country and world now, but the events so that you could easily take a work of art like that and without tearing up the city grid or excavating the street, you can just drop it down and there it is. And very, tremendous economic efficiencies in that. And so think what it would be like to be living in a town, in a city, that was a gallery of revolving art. And not only that, but since all this art that comes out of this event is produced by communities, that's an example to the people and the kids in a city to do art themselves, and that just enriches the culture. And I mean, our ambitions to remake the world in various ways have already been proven to succeed. Disaster relief in Mississippi, the solar projects, it's only beginning. And because our people come here, whether they're from Nevada or California or Singapore or wherever they're from, and they go back and they don't want to quit being the way they were here, and then they're surrounded by a community that will support them in this, and then projects just get created. And it doesn't have to be art; it can be almost anything. And that's a new version of civics. That's a new version of what the human enterprise can do to create a home for all of us here on Earth. So we're just, I like to say, we started on a beach and then we moved inland and we ended up here and we built a city. And sitting here right now on this playa in Nevada, as far as I'm concerned, this is the beach, and we're about to march inland again. But now we're looking at a much bigger world. What do I want to say? No, I guess.